How does the space race look different today than you might have expected 5, 10 years ago? And I know that the private sector is incredibly involved in driving a lot of what we're doing. Also, of course, the Chinese.
Yeah.
That
would be the big part.
Yeah.
I would say, China's engagement in space. They now have a small space station. They've got crew members in orbit now. They just returned a sample from the backside of the moon,
which no one's done before.
Nobody's done. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard to do.
Were we surprised?
No, we knew it was coming, but it's something we haven't tried to do. We are certainly capable of doing it, but it's challenging, and you got to give them credit. I mean, they did something successful that we haven't done before. We're way ahead of China in any space endeavor. We need to make sure we stay ahead. So now I would say our competition is now more China-focused than it was in the 1960s with the Soviet Union. Russia has spent a lot of time and effort in the militarization of space. Mm-hmm. China's doing the same thing. I sit on the Armed Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee. A big concern of mine is, how is the space domain going to be used in any future conflict? And there are challenges we face. Chinese develop, capability, and we keep track of that. We've got to make sure that we can counter their capability, but also, to the extent that we can, prevent them from using, space as a domain in any future conflict.
How far behind the Americans are the Chinese? Do we have a decent sense of that at this point?
Well, they've got a goal of, putting somebody on the surface of the moon. I expect we'll be successful with Artemis 3, which is the second crewed flight to the moon that we're working on these right now. We had Artemis 1 a couple years ago, went around the moon, uncrewed.
Unmanned, yeah.
Artemis 2 hopefully will happen next year, sending a crew of 4 around the moon, and then Artemis 3 down to the surface of the moon. I expect we'll be ahead of the Chinese. I don't feel like we're really in a race with them.
I mean, there has been some cooperation, right? I mean, in the sense that, first of all,
with the Russians.
With the Russians. Also, in terms of we have no, militarization of the moon. Nobody gets to have, sort of any claims on it.
So far on the moon.
So far.
I wouldn't put anything, past the Russians or the Chinese with regards to, their not complying with the treaty. Let's say, 1967, I think it was, the Outer Space Treaty said we're not going to use the moon for military purposes, mm-hmm. and nobody owns the moon. I wouldn't put it past, our adversaries to, change their minds.
But how much should we be trying to lean into science and the final frontier to facilitate international friendship in areas where, let's face it, there aren't many of them right now?
Well, we did that with the Russians, right, mm-hmm. starting in the 1990s. Well, actually before that with Apollo-Soyuz. Mm-hmm. But then with the International Space Station in the 1990s, hey, every space flight I went on, all 4 of them, were up to the space station. Sometimes I had Russian crew members on board the Space Shuttle with me. But there were always Russians on board the space station, every flight. And that cooperation worked really well. We got along in space. Teams got along on the ground. This tried to help, further a good relationship between our 2 countries. Unfortunately, what Putin did in Ukraine is, I'd say, indicative of, well, did that even matter?